Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kara O'Leary, and I serve as the Executive Director of Alumni Relations and Advancement. And I want to welcome all of you back to Reunion and this special panel celebrating the 100th birthday of Lamont. And I, along with some of my colleagues on campus, have been tasked with ways to celebrate this momentous occasion. And we thought we would be remiss not to try and do something at Reunion so that the alumni can all be involved in this celebration. So as you noticed, if you've checked in, you've gotten your Lamont lapel pins, you've gotten those great postcards with old pictures of Lamont. And today we're also going to do this panel where we have representatives from 8 different decades to share what Lamont looked like, felt like, all of those things with Anne from the 1950s, all the way to, yes, woohoo, to Emma representing the decade of the 2020s. So Shay Jolly Schneider, class of 2005, our assistant or associate dean of students. And just as an FYI to those on the panel, the statute of limitations has run out for any of the stories you may share, but Emma, I'm not so sure about. It's only been 5 years, so I'm not so sure. But Shay is going to serve as our moderator today, and she's got a series of questions. Our panelists are going to answer some of them. We'll also reach out to the audience to see if you have any unique stories or situations you would like to share with us. But before we do that, I would like to invite Addie Stefanik-Kishore to share with us more of an historical perspective of the building of how Lamont came to be, essentially, and some of the history behind that. So Addie, if you could share that with us, it'd be great.
Thank you, Kara. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm the middle of 3 generations of St. Mary's alumni. My mother was in the class of 1933. I'm class of 70, so while I represent the decade of the 70s on this panel, my experience here is really 1966 to 70. So that's my framework. And then my daughter graduated in 2004. So I also worked in alumni relations and in development here at St. Mary's for 31 years. And from that experience, I gathered a lot of information about Lamont Hall. In 1994, you may remember we celebrated our sesquicentennial, so 150 years. And I was on the sesquicentennial celebration committee, and I was tasked with tours of Lamont. So I had to dig deep and do some research, and then just over the years kind of kept adding on to the research. So when Kara asked me to serve on the panel, I said, are you going to have any kind of preamble to how did this building get here? What's the background, rather than just diving into the stories? And I said, I have a little bit of information I might be able to share. So that's why I'm kind of giving you this prelude on the panel. If you looked at your postcard, you all know why it's named Lamont, because it's after the town in France where Father Moreau established the Congregation of Holy Cross. Now, here's the question. Why is this called Stapleton Hall? Lounge, thank you. Lounge, Stapleton Lounge. Why is it called Stapleton Lounge? Okay, well, it's because it's named after Stella Hamilton Stapleton, class of 1892. In 1916, she was the first major donor to St. Mary's College. She gave Mother Pauline $50,000 to start a building fund. Mother Pauline had been campaigning for a separate building for the college students because enrollment was growing. At that time, Holy Cross had been built in 1903, and it housed St. Mary's Academy High School students, and it housed the growing college. And Mother Pauline, and enrollment was growing, there was more demand, and she said, we cannot really grow as a college unless we have our own separate facility. And she wanted it as far away from Holy Cross as she could get, and it in the very early days of the academy in the 1800s, this area here, students were not allowed to walk this far, so this was considered far away. But keep in mind, the Lake Marion was already in existence, so that was here. And if you look at old pictures, I think we've had some up on the screen. I mean, it's just sitting out here in the middle of nowhere. And the early pictures, without any landscaping, it makes it pretty stark. So she has a gift of $50,000, and that's going to be the beginning of her building fund. So in 1920, she asked the current college students, to put on a bazaar to raise money for this building fund. And meanwhile, alumni clubs were raising money and alums, and Mother Pauline was working on that. But she asked the students, and she said, if the bazaar is successful, you can have a dance here and invite men from Notre Dame. This is 1920, and they had never, ever had social activities together with men from Notre Dame. This was a big, so you can imagine how motivated the students were. Well, so of course the bazaar was very successful, and they raised an incredible amount for the time, $13,000 to add to the building fund, and they had their dance in the old St. Angela Hall, is where they had their dance. So by 1921, 22, the building fund was growing, and when she finally reached the $100,000 mark, and that's not very much money in today's world, she convinced the congregation, the Sisters of the Holy Cross, that it was time to build the building. One of the students, Margaret Carroll, class of 1925, suggested to Mother Pauline that she contact her brother, this Margaret Carroll's brother, who was a recent architect grad from Notre Dame, and for him to submit plans for the building. He did win the bids, so Maurice Carroll was the architect of Le Mans, and he designed a Tudor Gothic style building. The total construction cost at the time was $1.7 million. And the seed money for construction was $100,000. So the building was heavily mortgaged, and there were some tough times during the Depression, but they managed to get through. So the plan called for a 6-story tower, where we have, you can see the 6 stories. There was a lounge, which is this lounge, a library. Anybody know where the library might have been? It was right above us, which is what those of us in my era and beyond, we know as Queen's Court. But if you go up and take a look on 2nd floor and you look at the ceiling, it's like this, how fancy this ceiling is. It's like a wood coffered ceiling up on the 2nd floor in Queen's Court. So it called for the library, the chapel, of course, which spans the 2 stories, a social hall, which was actually where the business office wing is now. When those of us in my class, when we were freshmen, that was where we gathered and we had to sign in books. But I'm sure people will be talking about those. There was a post office, there was a president's suite, administration offices, and 4 student drawing rooms, which are in the east wing, which is where the development office is. And each class had a separate room. The seniors had the corner room, they were on the far end, and then there was space for each of the other classes. And if you go back there now, you can still see a lot of the old architectural detail, and there are still sliding doors that can be pulled closed to shut off all those little rooms. I think it was more, it wasn't just their social thing. I think it was kind of formal draw. I really don't know, because there weren't those rooms weren't here when we were. So maybe Anne has a clue when later on when she can maybe share something with us. But what was missing in Mother Pauline's plan? She wanted to have a completely autonomous college building. What was missing was a dining hall and classrooms. So that's why the far west wing, so there's this little passageway that connects this main building with that west wing, because they started construction on this building, but it was 6 months later before she got approval to add the other wing with classrooms and the dining hall. So the reception area, the Rainbow Lounge over there, was the dining room initially, and then in the back was the kitchen. And then, of course, those of us in my class remember the big, first couple of years, the big classrooms up on second and third floors, where we could slide in with our trench coats on and at 8 o'clock in the morning. So she was determined that the college had to be separate from the high school. So just a little bit about the social hall, which was over where the business office is, they would have afternoon tea dances and formal dances there, like it was a big ballroom. Of course, the drawing rooms were where the development office is now. We talked about the library being over Stapleton Lounge. Oh, after the Alumni Centennial Library was built, which is now Hager College Center, what was the library was turned into an art studio. And when when Moreau Hall was built and all the art went over there, then that's when it became dorm space, and it was called Queen's Court, and I have never come across why, other than in honor of Mary, Queen of Heaven. That's the only thing I can think of, but it's been called Queen's Court. The basement level under here in our day, well, when it was first built, it was a snack bar. It was called the Oriole, and it was just kind of an informal snack bar. In my time, it was where we did our laundry, and now it's just storage. And then the space under the Rainbow was initially called the Rectangle, and I think we just called it the Rec, and I think now Vendoland. I mean, is that what you call it now? But I remember it was a place where you would go after dinner and you'd play bridge or cards, and you could smoke. And of course, I didn't smoke, and I just would walk by that room, and it was just a blue haze of smoke. Just one final comment about why it's so significant that 100 years have elapsed and we still have this glorious building. It's because every summer when the students are gone, the maintenance staff comes in. I mean, I have been in my office and heard the banging upstairs on, getting the old steel tubs out of the bathrooms and putting in more modern facilities, painting. A new slate roof. During my time here, one summer they put on, it probably took them a couple of summers, a new slate roof on this building. That's major. They've had a couple of iterations of windows. How many remember the casement windows that you cranked out that leaked like a sieve? Well, we've had 2 different styles of windows since then. Constant painting, constant remodeling. They even buried, in this area out here, a tank for soft water, because during reunion for many years, people on the 4th floor, constant complaint, there's no hot water. Hopefully it's not like that anymore, but for 2 summers, they replumbed the entire building in order to get when they buried the soft water, that then it would work with new plumbing. So, and then of course, wonders of wonders, air conditioning in every room. So, it takes a lot to keep this building going, and we can all be thankful for the wonderful maintenance. So thank you for letting me just kind of give you some background.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Addie. As Kara said, I am Shay Jolly Schneider. I am class of 2005. I, too, serve on the committee that is working on celebrating Lamont. So I was asked to do this panel in support of that, but also because I lived here for 3 years of my 4 years here at St. Mary's. So to start, I would like our panelists to introduce themselves with their name, their class year, how many years they lived in Lamont, if that pertains to you, and if you served in any sort of leadership role in your time in Lamont, so RA, Hall Council, any of those kind of fun things. So we'll start with Anne and let her introduce herself here, and we'll go down and then back over this way.
Yes, please.
Is this okay? Is this okay?
Hold it a little closer.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Ann Reynolds Power, in the class of 1950, and I lived in Lamont from sophomore, junior, and senior year. So I had 3 years here, and all my classes were here on the second and third floor. And I just, what else do you want me to do?
That's perfect.
And I remember my 4 years at St. Mary's. It was a wonderful 4 years. And I come back every 5 years for a reunion because I love St. Mary's so much. And it's so good to see the changes and to see the campus again and to see the beautiful trees and the avenue. And it's just wonderful to be back. Is there
Thank you.
anything? Yeah.
Kathleen McEnany Glazer, class of 1965. When we were here, we had to live our first 2 years at Holy Cross Hall, and we only moved over to Le Mans for our junior and senior year. No, I did not serve on any, they would not have had me on any board. Only if you were looking for the troublemakers, I guess.
I love it. Eileen?
Oh.
I'm glad we're sitting next to each other. Eileen Gallagher Loringer from the mighty class of 1990, and I was here sophomore year in fourth floor annex. I did not also hold any leadership positions.
Hello, my name is Leticia McDonald Hart, class of 2000. I lived in Le Mans all 4 years, and I was also an RA my senior year.
Awesome, thank you. Addie?
You all know who I am. I'm just going to add, I lived in Milan my freshman year and my senior year. I think it was a little, I think most of our class lived in Holy Cross, but there were a few kind of extra people that they had to house, so we were all freshmen, except the end rooms, I think, were a couple of juniors, but the rest of us were freshmen, and now up there, they're all singles. When we would live there, they were doubles. It was a great year.
Hi, I'm Maureen Murphy-Quill, class of 85, and I lived here 1 year, and I was Pridal's commissioner, so I was on the hall council.
We're going to need to hear more about that in a minute. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Klosky. I'm the class of 2015, and I lived in Le Mans on my sophomore and junior year.
Hi everybody, my name is Emma Bodwin. I'm from the class of 2020. I lived in Le Mans for 3 years. So my sophomore year I was in the second annex, junior year I was in the third annex, and then my senior year I was the RA up in the fifth annex. And now I work in this building too, so in the admission office, so can't get rid of me. But
Awesome, thank you. Maureen, let's just go back. Yeah.
What are the annexes you're referring to? Oh, the back, this side of the building, so above Rainbow.
The wings that are above Rainbow.
We had classrooms.
Yes, where your classrooms were.
Yeah, there were like would have been old chalkboards like in my rooms,
Yes.
2 of them.
So Maureen, we're going to go back to you really quick. For some of us, we have not ever heard of Parital's commissioner, and we would love a little bit more information on what that is. Some of you probably remember Parital's commissioner and are shaking in your boots a little bit, but if you could give us a little overview as to what that was.
So, well, we've been talking about this. So Parital's
commissioner.
Parital's. So my freshman year, we had Parital's just on the weekends, which was when the men could visit. And then I think it was either, I want to say my sophomore, junior year, I changed that we could have them during the week. And the men had to sign in and give their card and then get it on their way out. So it was like, I don't know, 5 o'clock till 2 in the morning on Fridays, and maybe 1 to 2 in the morning on Saturdays and the afternoon on Sundays. And then they added evenings like 5 to 10 p.m. But as Parital's commissioner, and I did it here, and I did it when I lived in Regina and when I lived in McCandless, so my job was to assign students on the weekends to 2-hour shifts, and I would give them a schedule, usually at the beginning of the month, and say, you are working these hours, and no one wanted Saturday evening between 8 and 10, or, but you had to work, and you had to show up, and you had to work, and if you didn't work, then you got an 8-hour shift. So I did this for 3 years. My junior year, I lived here, and I would hand them out, and then I have a big poster I'd put in the lobby so people could see who was supposed to work. And my second semester junior year, I forgot about my schedule, and then so I had to assign myself an 8-hour shift to work. But that's what I did.
That's awesome. Thank you. Some of us have never heard of that, and I love it. So thank you for your service, because that sounds like a really rough job. I can only imagine your classmates. So let's start off with, we're going to have a chance for questions following.
You might have something to say.
Do you have it specific to this? So we still have visitation hours. On the weeknights, they are, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are 10 p.m. until midnight on weeknights, and then on the weekends they are till 2 a.m. So they are the same essentially, except for they are welcome to have young men in the residence halls whenever they want, and they don't have to check their IDs, with the exception of after midnight on the weekdays and 2 a.m. in the weekends. But visitation hours have not changed. So we're going to go to lounge spaces, because Addie gave us some really great information about what the spaces were built and what their purpose was, but they have changed over the years. So let's start with Rainbow Lounge. If Rainbow Lounge was anything different than what it is now, which is kind of that gathering space, casual lounge, if it was something different, what was it when you were here, and how was it utilized, and if you have any memories in that space? Well, we'll get to participation of the audience at the end, but I want to give our panelists a chance to answer. Anne, do you have any? It was the dining room?
It was the dining room. We had our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We had all our meals in the dining room. And from Holy Cross, if it was in the wintertime, we always walked over in the tunnel from Holy Cross to Le Mans for our meals in the dining room. And we had good meals, and we had we were served, by the staff students who served us, and we all, sat at certain tables and whatever. And it was always good food. I always enjoyed what we had, and that's what it was, the dining room.
Awesome. Kathleen, do you have something?
Yeah. Well, and by my year, a couple years later, it was a social room, and you could always find a bridge game going there during the day, but that's also where we met our dates, and was social, where we said goodnight to them too, with everybody else standing around watching. And then you go into the little room next door, and Sister B.A. would be standing there, our human breathalyzer test. And we would have to sign in under her very astute gaze, and but it was a great social room.
Yeah.
Shay, could I just add, while it was a lounge for us there in the 80s, my mom is class of 1956, so I asked her before this panel for some information as well, and Kathleen and I were talking about this. It was the dining hall when she was here, and you were assigned tables, and the assignments changed once a month, and there was a nun at every table, and you had to dress for dinner, so you were wearing uniforms at the time. Golf shirt dresses in the spring and summer, and then suits in the winter. But then you dressed for dinner, right? And then had to change every.
Was that in the Rainbow room?
For her, it was in the Rainbow. Yeah.
But the Rainbow room became the dining room.
Rainbow started as the dining hall.
Room.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it became
That-
lounge, but then it went back to a dining room.
She was 56, so she was ahead of you. Yeah.
Can I just, the original
never.
Rainbow is where the business office wing is right now.
But new
And
Rainbow.
that was a big, that in our freshman year, that was, so then when the new dining hall, first the iteration of a cafeteria-style dining hall, then what's now the Rainbow was the old dining hall became vacant, and that became then the social Rainbow, and it changed, so it shifted positions, but it was called the Rainbow.
Great. What about Stapleton? What about here in Stapleton? Was this space used any differently that you can remember? It was
Allowed in
It was
here.
pretty much off limits.
off limits.
Yeah, I don't think we could come
I think
in.
at Christmas time
Okay.
we were allowed in here for part of our Christmas pageant thing where we.
Okay.
Candles and-
I will add while
Oh,
I
no,
was off
definitely
limits
We could
during my
walk by
time.
and see the nice receptions in here.
Okay, great.
The other people.
Leticia?
While it was off limits, we did utilize this back room area as a kind of covert study room.
Uh-huh.
So folks would sneak in. We had our ways. I will not divulge my secrets.
I will
my
fully
sources.
support this because that was my favorite place to study.
That was a secret study spot. I didn't study there, but I had friends who did.
It was my favorite place to study because no one could ever find me. So what about the bell tower room? The room that's up in the bell tower. Does anyone remember what that space was? And or, I mean, even our newer students can talk about what it is currently.
When I was here, it was a modern dance studio because we had to take at least one credit of PE, and some people had PE over in the old Angela with the slanted floor, and some of us took modern dance upstairs.
That's awesome.
And we were very talented.
I will say it was an open lounge when I was here. We could go up there and hang out, and it became a lounge space. And y'all all heard Kara say that the statute of limitations has retired, even on me, the Associate Dean of Students. But during senior week, we may or may not have played beer pong up there. So it was good times. Good times. May or may not have. And then what is it currently? Do y'all?
Oh, there we go. It's the hall director's room now. So the apartment for the hall director. So she's in charge of all the RAs and all that kind of stuff for the building.
So our staff member that lives in the residence hall is the hall director, and her apartment, she has a full apartment that is now that room. It's a big open loft style apartment. It's really cool. It's got a really cool view of graduation. Commencement is really fun to watch from up there. So when you were students here and living in Lamont, who lived on the 5th floor? Was it residents? Were there special residents? I know we've talked about staff students. That might be something we can go back to, but any specific?
So I lived on the 5th floor with Lori. So it was great because you could only get the elevator up to 4th floor, and then you had to walk up the back.
Yep.
But no one knew we were there, and so we got away with a lot. We could sneak people up, and just no one knew we were there. It was great. The only bad thing was to know what the weather was. I had to stand on my desk to look out the window.
Yes, because those windows are high. Yes.
I mean, they're small, but
they're tiny. Yeah.
They're tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was the RA up on the 5th floor, and Madeline in the back lived up there almost across the hall from me. So yeah, it was just a tiny little hallway or whatever. I actually really liked being the RA up there because it was like really quiet, and it was mostly juniors and seniors living up there, and singles and doubles. So they were a good group for me to work with. So.
And then Anne, will you explain a little bit more about what the staff students were?
Well, they were girls who were working their way through school. They were girls who had jobs to work their way through school, and they served our dinners and our meals, and they just worked in the cafeteria, and that's all I remember about them, that they were the staff students who worked here, and they were all excellent. And all that, that's all I remember.
That's awesome.
Served our meals.
They lived on that 5th floor, and they could come down the back stairwell and come down into the kitchen of the dining hall that is that back wing, and so they would be able to come straight through there oh, wonderful. We'll have to come to y'all in a minute. So they were an awesome addition to the residents here in the building.
And they graduated in 5 years.
Yes. Yes. Fair enough. So we've kind of touched on who could live in Lamont when you were here. Anybody want to add to that of like class years that could live here? When I was a student, we did have first years through seniors who lived here in this building, and that is what we are back to now. We have first years through seniors who can live in the building, but I know some of you said you couldn't live here your sophomore year, or you didn't live here. Is there anything anybody wants to add to that?
When I was here, I think it was open to anybody, but we had that pretty sophisticated lottery system about selecting rooms, right? So it was all dependent on your lottery number,
Yes.
right? So.
And then the big, draft style, they had the maps and the board that they would call your numbers one after the other.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, and you'd have to, there was this whole
And it was
thing, you'd have to
anxiety
know
inducing,
your-
and we all sat there and were just overwhelmed by the
Right.
waiting for your number. Yes.
And you had like 6 or 7 options that you wanted,
and you would
all
mark them
talked
off
about it.
as they would announce what
Right.
rooms had been taken. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
So now our room selection is all electronic. So students are still assigned a random lottery number, but they're given a time slot at some point during the lottery days where they log into their electronic system and have the opportunity to pick the room. So it's kind of the same way, because up until the moment that they go live, they can check and see what rooms are available. So they're doing the same thing. They're marking off from their list, but then they get in and they get to add themselves into the room electronically. So they do not sit in the same room. They're all in their own dorm room. Some of them are on their phone. Some are in class choosing their rooms. Some tell their professors, I can't come to class because I have to do my room selection. So it's equally as anxiety-inducing, just a little bit different.
Shay, I'm going to add to that. Our students now create an Excel sheet with pictures of the room and their top choices, so they know exactly what room they want and their roommate and exactly how they want the layout. So they've definitely are so impressive with their room selection.
They do the
now.
research.
They do their research.
Yeah. Did any sisters live amongst you as residents when you were here in Lamont? Sister Eva? Sister Eva did, yes, yes. Awesome. What was the phone situation in your room when you were a student here? There we go. Did you have phones in the rooms? Were there phones in the hallway? Were there phones downstairs? What was the phone situation?
Well, in Holy Cross Hall, I don't think we had any.
We're just talking about Lamont.
Oh, Lamont. So Lamont's, we did have a hall phone, and we had somebody who was assigned to answer the phone and go and get you in your room. And if you weren't there, they would take a message as to who was calling and everything, so everybody could look at the list and see who was getting a call from who.
Scandalous.
But we could only make calls out from the phone booths, and there were only like 3 or 4 of them in the basement, weren't there?
Okay.
So, we didn't have them at the first floor. Ours were down in the basement.
Oh, they moved.
They made us walk further.
Yes, ma'am.
So our class started in 1966. We had no phones in our rooms the first year, but I think halfway through our sophomore year, we got phones in our rooms. So we remember, answering the phones and going to get somebody, and and everybody knew who, and going downstairs to be able to call out. Yeah.
Oh, that's so crazy.
Shay, we had phones in our rooms, and if I remember correctly, Barbie, didn't we have we dialed one number and then the 4-digit extension for St. Mary's, and then a different one number and the 4-digit extension for Notre Dame?
That's exactly it.
Right.
It was a double ring versus a single ring. When it was double ring, everybody knew it was coming from off campus.
I was going to add that, and we also had the long curlicue cords.
Yes.
And so people would go out in the hallway to have a private conversation if you didn't want your roommate to know what you were talking about. And so sometimes people would sit on the floor in the hallway with their cord from inside, because they were right inside the doors is where the phones were.
Yep.
I have a story about the rings. So my husband and I met our freshman year, and he understood this phone system. He would walk over to St. Mary's to be able to use a telephone, out here in the lobby or someplace, or down in the Rainbow, to call upstairs on us, because he could get through faster on a single ring than he could on a double ring.
That does not surprise me with your husband. I love that. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I remember mine because my phone password was so long. I always got password later in life because let it go. That was in the 90s, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. So what about all hall events? Do y'all remember any hall events, all hall, or large gathering events here in Lamont when you were students? Maureen?
So we had SYRs, and I don't know when they started, but did anybody of the earlier years have SYRs? So
SYRs,
Screw
which
Your
were a
Roommate. It was
dance
Screw Your Roommate.
They were called.
So it actually.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
So they were called Screw Your Roommates. They were SYRs, and they were basically an opportunity for you to set your roommate up with a date kind of thing and it was a dance.
Yeah, it was a dance. Yeah. So if Lamont was having a dance, then your roommate would call someone out of what we called the dog book, which was everyone's senior picture, and you'd call some random person that you thought was attractive, and your roommate would call them, and then they'd come over and you go to the dance together. And yeah, my husband and I, none of us met people that way. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It's like Tinder.
Yeah, it was. It was pre-Tinder.
Yeah.
Yes, totally was. It totally was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't
really
Facebook.
Fun.
It was the dog book.
It was the dog.
Yeah, it was good times.
It was pre all that.
Yeah.
They have them in the archive, by the way.
Yes, they do have some of the dog books in the archives. Yes, not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah, that was the only way really that we met people, was like looking people up and calling them. But I feel like we didn't have a lot of dances at. Maybe Maureen's class got a little too wild with the dances or something, because there were restrictions about dance. I only remember one hall dance, and it was a big deal that we finally had a SYR back here, on campus. We have one.
I remember the photos. They used to come around and do each section, like second annex photo, and then they would gather everybody out front. They would do the hall photos, and then there would be, and you would buy the photo of your hall, and then you would buy the photo of your section of where you lived. I still have mine.
I totally forgot about those, but yeah, I remember now being in every single one of those pictures. Yeah, Addie.
So our freshman year, when we started, our semester did not start till the middle of September. So we had a freshman-friendly dance in what was then empty. The old dining room was then empty because it was a transition year. That's where I met my husband. He asked me to dance on September 30th, 1966.
Oh, I love that. Oh, so Lamont's extra special to you. Speaking of parties and dances, what were the rules about alcohol, parties? Again, statute of limitations has, and that goes for you too, Emma, so you're safe to talk about it. When you lived in Lamont, what were the rules around alcohol and or partying? Were there any? Did you follow them?
Yeah, no. But the rules were nothing. You couldn't have
It was
anything.
dry campus.
But so I was in the annex, and if I remember correctly, I was in the doubles that were really small, but across the hall, that must have been the classroom spaces, so they were really big. And that's where the parties happened, because they were really big rooms. And there's some really kind of quiet back doors around here where you could get stuff that you needed in maybe like a big mail cart or something. And then you just look like you're helping, right?
It's very helpful. Our students are very helpful.
So by the time that I got here in the late 90s, you could have alcohol if you were above 21. But everyone, if there was a period of time when my roommate was 21 and I was not. So she could not have alcohol because I was not 21 yet. So when I was here, you could have it if everyone in the room was 21.
So when we were here, that was when some states were 18, some states were 19, some states were 21. So technically, if you were 21 and over, because it was Indiana, you could drink, but no one paid attention to it on either campus. I mean, we would have parties, and I lived in a 19 state. Some of our friends had 18. You just bring back liquor, and we had big parties. And they had kegs at Notre Dame, just open parties. It was not, nothing was enforced at all.
Nowadays, do y'all want to touch on?
Oh, there we go. I can't remember all of the like specific amounts that we could have because I should remember that. But we had like certain amounts of things that we could have. So only like a certain amount of like beer and certain amounts of wine. I don't remember how much. And I think you could still have alcohol in your room if you were 21, even if your roommates weren't. But then obviously they were like not supposed to drink it.
Correct. They do, but they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that if we were 21, it was okay to have alcohol in our room. My birthday's in December, so I'm always the last one to turn, 16 to drive, 21 to drink. And my roommate was also a December birthday, but she was a whole year older than I was. So finally, when I turned 21, we lived on the 4th floor, which I think they now call library wing. We didn't have a name for it, but we lived there. And she decided we were going to have a little hall party, so everybody gathered, plus a few other friends, and we invited Sister Franzita from the English faculty, because we were both English majors, and Sister Franzita, and we all sat out in the hall, and we gave Sister Franzita a chair, the rest of us sat on the floor, and we all had a glass of wine.
A lovely party. Very classy back in the 70s.
Shay, could I add the other thing about when we had parties, which, we did have a lot of them, as Maureen, I'm sure, would know, that you also had to have a very elaborate and structured system for parietals. Because we had everyone had a card, a little manila card, and you were limited, and that's where the IDs went. And so you were limited in the number of IDs you could have for your card. So if you were going to have a party and you wanted a bunch of guys to come from Notre Dame, you had to make sure you had enough people from the hall, enough girls invited, and you then told the guys, you're coming to see so-and-so, right? And so the guys had to know what name they were leaving their ID with.
Wow.
Right? And then, because I don't think you have more than 2 IDs per card, so per little envelope. And that was how you got people over.
I love it.
Because we followed the rules.
Right.
We followed the rules.
We were following
we
the
didn't
rules.
sneak them in for the party.
No, yeah. You held the parietals. You held your party during parietals. I appreciate that. So I am gonna wrap up our time kind of talking with our panelists with one question that I would like everyone to answer, and then we will open it up to questions and or memories or things you want to elaborate on that has been talked about. But I do ask, I will pass a mic so that we can make sure that everybody can hear everyone and everything. So we will get to that part. But the last question I have for our panelists that, again, I want everyone to answer is, if you have a favorite story or memory from your time specifically in Lamont that you are open to sharing with our audience today. Leticia, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. When I was an RA, there was some incident on campus. I don't know if it was a fire or something, and the power went out. And so all the RAs, of course, had to go report to the hall director, and we were all assigned to watch the doors because the system was down. And I was assigned to this door down here by myself for 2 hours, from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And it was probably the scariest 2 hours of my life. Nothing happened, but I was really, 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 really concerned about the ghost stories and about hearing noises. And we had walkie-talkies, and so every so often I would be like, hello? Hello? I felt there was nobody near me, and I was by myself for 2 hours.
Oh, goodness.
I survived.
So my Le Mans story is a little bit, it's not funny like that, but for me personally, freshman year was really difficult. Like, it was a huge adjustment to go away to college. It was really hard. And so when I figured out where I was gonna live sophomore year and who I was gonna live with, I had a wonderful friend from one of my classes who's like, I need someone to live with. I'm like, so do I. And so we ended up, and we got our room in Lamont, and that year really changed everything for me, right? So I found a whole new group to be with, a whole new experience at St. Mary's, and I look at that as a really special time that sort of launched a new direction for me with St. Mary's.
My 80-year-old mind is not, my memory is not as good as other people's maybe, but one thing, it's sort of vague, but it's just something I always remember is very beautiful, and I think it's Christmas when we had we wore the little wreaths and we had candles, or I don't know, they obviously weren't real candles, I don't think. They were real candles. We were that fire, we weren't, I guess we weren't worried about this old building then.
Not yet.
But it was just beautiful at Christmas time, and the whole place was dark except for, we all went through it, and didn't we wear something? Big sisters. Yeah. With our big sisters and little sisters went through it. Thank you. This is why.
Well, I've seen the pictures, and even the pictures of this is incredible. So I could only imagine being there.
So it was.
That's so cool.
It was a beautiful.
Oh, I love
very
that.
Warming memory.
Well, I can't say I have any special, specific memories of being in Lamont. I just remember the 3 years I was here that everything was nice and I enjoyed it. Of course, I had to study.
Yeah.
That was the main thing with the classes. And of course, they were in Lamont. All our classes were there, and we just had. But as far as any specific story to tell, I just don't have any.
That's awesome.
But I just have my memories of the years I was here.
Love it. Thank you, Anne.
Well, I've shared many of my memories of Lamont, but I just want to tell another story which predates actually my being here as a college student. When I was 8 and 9, we lived in Lafayette, Indiana, and we would visit relatives in Detroit. And of course, my mother, having been an alum, we always had to come through South Bend. And I just so vividly remember driving up to the front circle of Lamont, walking in those front doors, and at the time, those two little offices out there in the foyer, they were staffed by one room, I think, there was a greeter, a sister of the Holy Cross was always sitting there to greet you. And my mother, having been an alum and also had worked as a student while she was here, the sister would come out and would greet her by name. It was just such a welcoming environment. And from the time, after several times of doing that, from the time I was 10 years old, I said, I'm going to St. Mary's.
Well, I've shared a few stories, but I think the biggest thing about Lamont is the symbol it is on campus, and as some of my friends were talking earlier, just walking through classes through the hallway, and it was always your touchstone with St. Mary's. So it was just the beauty of Lamont.
Yeah.
I think for me, I was talking to Emma about this. I was walking back from class. Lamont is the center of St. Mary's. So usually students want to live here because it's close to everything. But I came back to my room and a girl was sleeping in my bed. And I was really taken back. My roommate was just like, this girl followed me from class. She just needed to rest. I thought she was going to sleep in my bed, but she slept in yours because she has classes in the science hall. She's a nursing major and doesn't want to walk back to Regina. So she was sleeping and I waited until she woke up and I asked her who she was and why she was sleeping in my bed. And she is one of my best friends to this day. And now I sleep in her daughter's bed when I go visit her. So it just is a full wraparound of like how special Lamont is to me and to her.
It's fun.
I like all the wholesome stories, but my friends and I were already laughing because they know what story I'm gonna tell. I was, senior year, I was an RA, and I wasn't quite 21. I was a late birthday as well, and especially having like a leadership role, I was really wary about like drinking before I was 21. So my friends were all going out this one weekend, and I think I might have been out called too, so I wasn't even gonna do that. But but I was like down in the basement doing laundry, and I don't know what time it was, but between rounds. And I am pressing the button for the elevator. The door opens and two of my friends are there, and I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" In our time we had to like swipe our IDs to get upstairs up to the other floors, and my friend had a little bit too much to drink and was trying to swipe her driver's license. to get upstairs. So I was like, what are you doing? So then I was like, okay, I'll swipe you up, and then we're gonna walk upstairs together. And I was like, that was just so funny. But with the 3 years, like we also had so much fun just like hanging out together in our different rooms, and yeah, just wonderful memories of this place, of course.
Great. So now we are going to go to the audience participation portion of our event and offer an opportunity if you have other questions you want to ask of our panelists, or if you have memories or stories of Lamont that you would like to share. Again, I do ask that you just wait for me to bring you a mic. But yeah, anybody? Oh, we'll start over here, and we'll run our way there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's the spirit of community of Lamont. And we talked about the double rings, and everyone answered the phone for someone else because it was like who was calling, and we didn't want a double ring to go unheeded. So we were there for each other. But playing off of the hub of campus, outside in this hallway, and we've talked about it since we walked in the door yesterday, there were bulletin boards and there were the chalkboards. And if you received flowers or a package, your name was on the board. And not only did you feel really important, you knew everybody also knew that you received flowers. And it was, who'd you get flowers from? Oh, my mom sent me flowers. Really? I didn't get them from my mom. Usually it was my sister or something like that.
And that was still a thing in 2000 when we graduated.
Nice. Very cool.
And Valentine's Day was absurd. I saw a hand over here.
I was in Lamont only 1 year. It was my freshman year, and when I thought I was going to be in Holy Cross. So when I came, to my surprise, I was in a quint in one of the classrooms. There were 5 of us. We had movable closets and all of this. And we were from everywhere. I had a Texas roommate, a Chicago roommate, New Jersey. I was from Virginia. And anyway, the first night we were there, we must have wanted to test out the electricity because we had 4 hair dryers going. There was a stereo system going. And all of a sudden, the wing went dark. We had successfully blown the fuse. So, needless to say, the senior down the hall, and they knew what to do, but it was like the first or second night we were there that we had succeeded in doing that.
This is a very sentimental statement, but I think this building is one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. And it's what I always think of when I think of St. Mary's. I can still have the smell from Holy Cross and all of that, but Lamont, walking in that hallway, the gorgeous woodwork, I just can't even imagine they visualized this, let alone made these gorgeous things. And we did many different things in Stapleton, from small things to big things, sometimes receptions or talks or whatever. But it's friggin' gorgeous. You know, it is so gorgeous. And, you know, the rooms and everything were, you know, some had fireplaces and some, you know, just totally unique. And the chapel, oh my gosh, it's just out of this world. And the fact that they gathered enough money to make this over-the-top, incredible building as the center of this campus is one of the highlights of my life.
And that it's still here and still so desirable to our students and to our staff. It is still the cornerstone of this campus, which is just so powerful. It's funny because my niece has been here a couple times just to visit, and she still says, can we go to the castle? Like, can we go to the castle? Aunt Shay, baby, I want to go to the castle. And absolutely, we can go to the castle. Anything else anybody wants to?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that the architect was somebody Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so was he related to the Mary Carroll that was in the alumni office here for years? Helen Carroll. No, he was not related.
No relation.
Okay.
Yes.
I've been I've been trying to remember this nun's name, but on the 4th floor of Le Mans, on Saturday night, there was a little nun, older nun, who would sit there. And, you know, if you got off the elevator and you were whistling or making lots of noise, she would really get after you. And I was wondering if anybody remembered her name. But it was the 4th floor of Le Mans, and she would sit right across from the elevator. Right off the main elevator. She would actually... No, this one. Yep. Yep.
So what year was that?
Well, I'm the class of 70, so it would be 66 to 70. That might be it. She was no. She would scare you. She was an impressive figure.
Someone mentioned elevators. Does anyone remember the old elevators when we were here with the gate that you had to close? And if you didn't close the gate, you were yelling up and down the shaft, "Close the gate."
You weren't allowed to use the elevators. Oh, wow. Libby?
So I was telling somebody the story earlier that I was a theology, psychology major here, and so I wanted to take a lot of theology classes across the street. And I was in a class with Father David Burrell, and there were a bunch of football players in the class. They're taking their elective, and we were in a small group, and got our papers back, and I got an A, and they did not get A's. And so they said, well, could you help us with the next paper? And I said, absolutely. You just need to take the shuttle and come over to St. Mary's, and we can meet in Rainbow Lounge, and we'll figure this out together, and I'll help you with your next paper. And so I was so proud because at the time, and maybe still today, there was this little derogatory thing that St. Mary's women maybe weren't as smart as, and I just thought, I take the bus over here every week to take this class twice a week, and they can take the bus over here. And they loved coming over here. We had great study sessions, and every time I'm like, sometimes when I'm walking down Le Mans, I just remember those guys, and it was really fun. I don't remember, but they just maybe weren't theologically minded. Yeah.
That's one way to put it. What about, anybody have any memories staying in Le Mans during a reunion? Because we've all many of us have stayed in Le Mans for reunions. Do you have yeah?
Again, the worshiper of Le Mans, I loved coming back and staying in the dorms. And up until, probably, let's say in 2010, so let's say 15 years ago, still no air conditioning or anything. I put that little fan up there. I loved it. It just took me back. And the window's still cranked out. I don't do that anymore, but loved it. Loved it. I would do it now rather than being at the end if that were like a reasonable thing to do.
Can I say I do not remember the beds being quite so
high
and uncomfortable.
Or
maybe I'm just too old now.
Yeah.
Maybe these were beds that we could sleep in when we were 19. But
well, now we have so many regulations with what fabric can be used and all of that it does make different mattresses for what we can utilize. I will say, you mentioned the smell of Holy Cross. I have the same feeling here in Le Mans. I can smell something at any given moment, and it takes me back into this building, because even Kara at the beginning said kind of the sights and sounds of this space have changed, and you notice she didn't say smell, because I feel like we all kind of have that same memory of the smell of this place, and it's just so unique and so special. It takes me to a different place anytime I smell something that reminds me of Le Mans. At this time, we are going to wrap up. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. And to all of you for sharing your stories and sharing your experiences. You know, this place, like we've said, is such a cornerstone and so special to so many of us. We are really, really thankful for all of you who have come before and those that will come after all of us and experience the same space. So thank you so much.